Greetings, salutations, and welcome to the Kreeger Cast. I'm your host, Patrick Kreeger, and today I am joined by John McAfee. How are you today?
I think I'm pretty good. I'm still breathing. That's a sign of success in my world.
Indeed it is. So I've been going back through and trying to watch every interview that I've ever seen you do, just to try not to
You,
tread over old ground.
you poor fellow. I'm good for it. That must have been a tragic time.
It really wasn't. You're quite entertaining, and it's really fascinating how you really do change how you react to the different interviewers, and I kind of really enjoyed that. But so I'm going to leave all the questions that I've heard time and time again, completely on the back burner and ask you about some stuff that I haven't heard you talk about too much.
Awesome.
Um,
That shit, I promise you.
well, I'm going to start off with what I kind of consider what I think you're a little bit least passionate about, and then hopefully get into some more subjects that you're passionate about. So, how did you get into cybersecurity at the beginning? That's something I haven't heard you talk about.
Well, keep in mind, okay, so I cut my teeth on computers in 1960. Uh, 1967. In 1967, I had a job with General Electric, who was making the only process automation computers in the world at the time. And I was assigned the job of automating Australia Iron and Steel's steel mill in Port Kembla, New South Wales. And that was the most in-depth programming in the world. It's where you're actually controlling real-time processes, and microseconds mean the difference between a broken roller and a successful run. And from that, I moved directly to NASA, working on the Tyros weather satellite reduction. And that's where I got my first taste of security. Everybody was so concerned the Russians were going to be finding out weather patterns. This is how stupid politics are. It's been it. And prior to forming McAfee, I was with Lockheed working on a black government program, for Christ's sakes, that I still can't talk about. And yet it was 23 years before that program, which is running live at the time, was even acknowledged by the U.S. government. And it was treated like, hey, look what we just developed. Well, fuck that, I was 25 years old. So security is just all I've ever done. McAfee was the obvious continuation of that, with the advent of computer viruses, and there were no antivirus programs at the time, and so I started writing them, and that became McAfee. The first year, I started off working in the kitchen of our home with my wife, Judy. And a year later, we had $300 million in the bank and still living in that same tiny little house. Only now we had 11 other people living with us. My wife, Judy, finally said, "You are getting an office, or I'm leaving." It was a hard choice, because getting an office meant we have to shut down for half a day. How are we going to handle that crap? But anyway, so I chose the office, and that was the wise decision.
It does kind of seem to be important to keep work and home life separate, if
It
you
is.
can.
It trust me, is absolutely crucial.
And it's interesting that you say this because, from what I was able to tell, and that's why I wanted to hear you say it, everyone is saying that you developed your cybersecurity features when you were in college.
No,
So
that's
is that true, or?
oh no, I'm 74 years old, people. I was 20. Well, I was 18 when I first went to college. There were no fucking computers.
Well,
The first, the IBM computer didn't come out until the 60s, for fuck's sake. I was in my 20s. No, there were no computers. There were no computer courses. No one had heard the name computers. Good God, people. No. So my
well,
first job was an electric in 67. I'm sorry.
no, it's just really nice to hear you say the set the record straight.
Oh, good God. No. Listen, as soon as they came out, I was on it, and I've been on it ever since. But They didn't have courses in computer science because there wasn't such thing. And when I started programming, we didn't have monitors and keyboards, people. We
Were
flipped
you
switches. We flipped switches on the front panels of machines the size of office blocks. That's what programming was. I
so
mean,
you actually had to
ones and zeros for every single program instruction. Can you imagine the nightmare of debugging programs that we had to input by hand in ones and zeros? Jesus God. Now, when the first assembler came out, we all thought, that's the greatest thing since sliced bread. We don't have to remember that F1 is branch if low, and that C0 is check low, shift right one. No, fuck no. We could write BRU, branch unconditionally. Subtract. No, really, SUB. A, C. Subtract C from A. Get a fucking answer. Instead of having to write down the entire goddamn instruction in ones and zeros. So we were in Fat City, but we still
you
didn't have
know
keyboards and we still didn't have monitors. We had fucking punch cards. That was it.
that's actually what I
Monitors.
wanted to get to.
I'm sorry?
Um, that's what I wanted to get to is punch card computing. I've grown up with those stories. My dad went to college in the 50s, and he always talks about how when the early punch card computers came on, that was such a time saver. But even that wasn't that great.
No, it was better than throwing switches on the front panel. I promise you, my friend. Way, way better. Um, and it just moved up from there. And
Well, and then I got to ask one more
yeah,
question about that sort of era. The mechanical, like calculators and stuff like that. My dad always used to tell me stories about how people would go up and type in equations that they couldn't possibly solve, and they would just run forever. You didn't happen to be one of those sorts of people, did you?
no, of course not. We didn't do any mechanical. Listen, I've never done any mechanical in computing. I don't know how to even approach an adding machine. No, it's all digital.
Okay, okay. Um, well, so there's actually a couple topics that keep seeing brought up that like nobody ever really wants to ask you questions on, but you seem passionate about, and that's really fishing. Um, I've heard you bring it up on podcast after podcast, and no one ever asks you like, do you do deep sea trolling? Are you okay with going freshwater fishing? Like, what drives your passion for the sport?
Solitude and peace, and really, there's no solitude to deep sea fishing. I mean, that is a
No.
that is that is an interminable period of absolute boredom, which may stretch for days, interspersed with an hour of the most intense experience fighting a tuna tail. No, no, that's not the fishing I want. I want the fishing by the banks of a little river, a little cane pole, a line, a bobber. I don't care if I catch fish or not. A little basket with some cheese and wine. No, that's the fishing I'm talking about. It's the escape from the world that has not let me escape. As many
Yeah, it's
times,
the
I'm 74. I tried to retire when I left McAfee in 1993. And that lasted for 3 months. I formed Tribal Voice and Zone Labs, made $400 million off of Zone Labs in what, 10 fucking months? Didn't give me any pleasure, nothing. I had more money than God. I couldn't spend what I had. And yet I kept doing things because if I sat still for more than 10 minutes, an idea would pop into my head. And I'd rush home and implement it. It's a character flaw that I've been unable to escape.
but it seems to add to an interesting life. And I hope it's a life that you're happy with.
There is no happier person. There is none.
Good. And but that drive of yours to do random things that strike your fancy is one of the things that makes you such an interesting person. And I know you don't particularly like personality pieces and all that. I've heard that come up a couple times as well. But the fact that you're willing to invest so much time, money, and effort into working on antibiotics, which is, again, something you've covered multiple times, I think is important because people like that, drive things.
Well, listen, the antibiotics, here's a tragic story. I don't know what your listeners or you know about bacteria or viruses for that matter. But we've always thought they were stupid little creatures that were isolated and just replicated. And that's not true. We know now, and we learned about 10 years ago, that through a facility called quorum sensing, bacteria communicate with their own kind and with every other species of bacteria. I'll give you an example. Um, Flesh-eating staph bacteria, they don't get on your skin and start eating you. If they did, they wouldn't survive. You got a few million of them, your white blood cells that come along and go, whoa, who's eating us? Those weird things. Dispatch them and they're gone. No, they wait until a biomass is formed, what's called a quorum. Enough so that when they do start eating your sorry ass, your system is going to be debilitated to the point that your white blood cells are going to have a struggle. That's where fever comes from, and pain and the inability to stand up. No, they're smart motherfuckers. But when I discovered that, I thought, well, wait a minute. They're communicating, and we know how they communicate. It's a chemical process where every bacteria says, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. And somehow some invisible calculator within each and every one of these cells goes, hey, a quorum's reached. There's 400 quintillion of us. Let's start eating this mother. And simultaneously, at once, they do. So I'm going, how about if we deafened those motherfuckers? What if we had a chemical that confused their receptors and they didn't know how many were there? They would never turn pathogenic. And when a biomass was reached, the white blood cells would just eat them alive. Why? You're not debilitated by the pathogenic effect of the bacteria. So that was my premise. I was in the jungle. I knew that plants had been on Earth 2 billion years longer than animals. I also knew that plants are handicapped. And plants, by the way, suffer more diseases, oddly enough, than animals. Plants can't get up and move when their neighbor gets sick. What do cows do? Cow gets sick. Every cow avoids them. They walk away. Plants do not have the luxury of uprooting themselves and avoiding a diseased neighbor. So in my mind, I think been here 2 million years long, 2 billion years longer, can't move. They have to have a vastly superior autoimmune system. And they
Hmm.
did. We found it. All plants fight bacteria using quorum sensing anti-chemicals. They deafen the bacteria. The bacteria cannot activate, and the plants live happily ever after. So we started extracting this. We had 5,000 spray-on bottles already manufactured. We had given 3,000 out to the local Belizeans. Why? The leading cause of death for adults of working age is in the jungle. You get a scratch. Uh, you got a 50-50 chance of dying. You got,
Still,
yeah,
in the modern world? Wow.
yes, yes. Hang on, people. There's some dangerous places in this world.
Yeah.
And you have an environment which has 1,000 times as many different variety of viruses and bacteria and bugs, insects, poisonous shit, and other stuff you can't believe. Yes. So now we started passing this stuff out. It was magic. People would come to us with with sores that look like they're going to have their arm removed, and a week later, completely fucking healed. That was 2 weeks before the Belizean government stormed my property. Why? They'd come and said, Mr. McAfee, why don't you give us a $2 million donation to the government for our next election? And I said, no. A week later, they stormed my property, shot my dog, destroyed my lab and all 2,000 remaining bottles of this magic and all of my records, all of my records. Then came back the following day and said, Mr. McAfee, we're so sorry we had bad information. We thought you were manufacturing drugs in this laboratory. They knew better. And they said, Mr. McAfee, by the way, have you reconsidered your donation? I foolishly said, get the fuck off my property. I should have said, yes, I have. And you asked for 2 million, I'm giving you 4. That's what a wise motherfucker would have done. Well, I am a emotional sort of character and said, get the fuck off my property. And that began the war that ended with me being imprisoned in Guatemala and then finally extradited to the States under my own will, where I was perfectly fine. But that's a different story.
No, and I greatly appreciate you going into detail on these antibiotics because, again, no one really got you to go into it. They all want to hear about the raid and not actually about the
Right.
science.
But God, let me tell you, okay, you know the plants that we found that had the highest potential of anti-quorum sensing substances? Tiny little carnivorous fucking plants. And by the way, half of the jungle is carnivorous plants. You got the big fuckers.
Really?
Yes, the big fuckers, pitcher plants, 3 feet tall. They eat frogs, okay? Then you've got the Venus flytrap, which basically gets flies, bees, things of that size, all the way down to plants you can barely see.
Yeah, like
That
the
get
little sundews and whatnot.
yes, yes, yeah. They get these tiny, because they're tiny insects. You think they're not. Have you ever had crabs, which is that's a crude word. Baby, what's the word for crabs? What is that shit? Doesn't matter. Anyway, tiny little things you get on the skin, you can't get
Yeah.
them off. Right. That's how tiny shit gets. And these plants eat those insects. And I don't know why. Maybe it's because the reason that we have carnivorous plants is in the jungle, the soil, there's nothing in the fucking soil.
Mm-hmm.
Why? It has been depleted for 100 million years of cycling through. No, there's nothing in the soil. So you have things like air plants, the bromeliads, that get their sustenance from dew, from the air. You got the sun. Then you've got the dying animals. And let me tell you, animal dies in the jungle, it does not go into the earth. It is consumed first by ants, or if it has a predator that's looking for a lazy meal, even before the ants can get it, by flies, by lizards, by bugs unimaginable, by centipedes, and by the fucking carnivorous plants. So it was the tiny carnivorous plants who were the highest developed in terms of anti-quorum sensing functionality. And that's what I did. That's all gone and can never be recovered because A, I can't go back there. B, all the records were destroyed. 2 years of hundreds of people searching for plants they had not seen before or thought might do.
And of
Thousands
course,
thousands of plants we collected and brought back and analyzed and put into the petri dish with our Pseudomonas bacteria, which Pseudomonas is the most common bacteria in the world, completely non-pathogenic, doesn't hurt anything. Nobody knows why the fuck it's even here. Nevertheless, there's lots of it and it's safe. So we use that to do our testing on. So yeah, it's gone. They destroyed it, and that chapter of my life is over. And it's tragic because we could have people saved hundreds of millions of lives. And word got out, by the way. Listen, I lived in the jungle in Orange Walk. I was the only white man in a district of 15,000 people over 5,000 square miles. The only white man. And people would show up in suits, and I never wore a fucking suit. White people. cruising by in SUVs in front of my compound. I'm sorry. That was Sandoz and Bayer and all of the other drug companies desperate to figure out what the fuck we were doing. It was an exciting time of my life. And it's a time that probably, if there's anything that I could change, it would be the outcome of
Yeah.
Quorum X, which was the company that I founded.
And just to be clear and kind of put it in other terms, it's like radio jamming for bacteria. Does it work on
Yeah,
viruses too?
well, to a certain
Sorry,
extent.
I'm now curious.
To a certain extent, but no bacteria. We weren't trying for viruses, although it has come to the attention of scientists that biologists that viruses may do the same. But no, we're strictly bacteria. Listen, bacteria is half the fucking problem. So
Yeah.
it's a start.
And it's kind of great because it just opens the body up to fight itself, like fight the infection itself.
Yes, because if you can stop them from being pathogenic, does it matter? If
Yeah.
half a body is bacteria, who cares? They never do anything. They eventually just become food for your white corpuscles. That's all they are. It's such a beautiful concept, and it was such a fucked up thing for the Belizean government to destroy what I thought was the most promising medical program to come from um, natural medicines. And it wasn't really natural because we were extracting a bunch of shit, nevertheless. It's sort of natural, it came from plants.
Mhm.
And the history of natural medicine.
It's funny how often the government kind of destroys things that they don't understand. I mean, in your case, it was clearly a message, but
Oh,
often,
yep.
even when they're trying to do quote unquote good, they destroy things unintentionally.
See, when you say trying to do good, I do not believe that any government that has uh, politicians and people in power making lots of money doing anything good. I'm sorry. See, the power does corrupt people. An absolute power, like in Belize with the dictator, corrupts absolutely. You must understand this. Governments have no desire to do good. The people within governments have the desire to please your sorry asses, so you will vote for them. And they do this in the guise of doing good. But no, people, all is vanity.
As someone who's trying to start a small business, I can tell you that, or I can tell the audience that it just seems like government gets in the way.
Of course, get in the way. Holy shit. Well, you're trying to start a small business. I don't know what kind of business, but you're going to get tax ID so
Hmm.
that you can pay the government on the fruits of your labor. Please God. Next, are you going to hire employees? Have you checked with the
Unfortunately, yes.
well, then check with the Occupational Safety and Hazard Administration, OSHA? Oh no, those people will crawl up your ass, and you'll never get them out. Have you got your business license? Not just from the local town. You may need a state, or God forbid, a federal license.
Hmm.
Have you
I'm
filled
start
out all of the goddamn form? No. How do you start a business in America today? It's fucking impossible. This has got to
I'm
stop
tr-
people. Go ahead.
Oh no, I don't want to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
You did not. Go ahead.
Um, just to let you know, so you can feel worse for me, I'm trying to start a liquor business.
Oh, well, fuck you, dude. Just not happening. No, no. We're talking about a bribe. Listen. Oh, whoa, whoa. You are in a very treacherous and slippery area here. Because not only do you have to deal with the government's attitude toward things like liquor, which is fun. We do not want our goddamn citizens having fun. Who knows what they will do if they stop with fun, right? That's number
Hmm.
one. Number two, the Christian right segment of government. I'm sorry, I hate to be saying this. Is a powerful group, and God doesn't even want you to drink, and you want to fucking license to sell alcohol? Well, fuck you. There's that coming at you. Dude, it ain't happening unless you're going to bribe somebody. I'm telling you now. Um, Ask a taxi driver how they got their taxi license. Ask any liquor store owner how they got their fucking license. I regret to tell you this, but you seem like a very nice young man, and I would hate to see you get fucked over and hurt.
It's why I'm actually doing a backup plan as well. But I've been working on this for 4 years,
Yes,
and man, every time I hit a wall, it is such a
now
setback. But I keep plugging along, you know.
you said the magic words. 4 years. Now, if we lived in a society that had any sanity whatsoever, what did you really need? Well, you got to have a place. Rent yourself
Hmm.
someplace. How hard is that? Number two, I've got to get stock. Call some liquor store, liquor suppliers. How much is J&B? How much is Johnny Walker Red? How much is 12-year-old McAllen? Write some number and say, yeah, tell you what, I want to place an order for this. Put yourself a fucking sign outside and go, this is uh, this is Kreeger's Club for the alcoholically inclined, and open the goddamn doors. But no, we can't do
Yeah.
it. 4 years, my friend. 4 years. Listen, anybody out there listening to this, you're hearing some real shit go down here. We got to stop this, people. We can't let the government that should be working for us make us work for them.
And it's not like they can't find some way to skim money somewhere. Why do they have to put so many roadblocks, in the way?
Because that's their job. I mean, you've got a job. They're paying you $40,000 a year to do something, and if you do not impede, interfere, trip up, or somehow stop something, because that's all you can do in a government. You can't create in the government. You can only stop creativity. Well, that's what they do. This is just the nature of our reality.
I will tell you this, though, I'm mildly blessed. I live 25 miles from the nearest town, and so
Oh,
all I have to deal with is this state.
I
No
did the same.
offense.
I did the same thing in Colorado. I lived, but now it's up at 10,000 feet. Okay. And we had to have our own snow plows and blowers and all sorts of shit just to get to town. But in any case, it can't be like this forever because we're crippling
No.
our society, our economy, our entrepreneurs, and our children. And we
And
have
what do
time
you
for
think?
one more question. I'm really sorry. One of very
All
time.
right, that's fine.
All right.
Then I'm going to ask you kind of a question. What's with your propensity for revolvers? I'm kind of a gun nut myself, and I've noticed that that you have a lot of revolvers, and I was wondering what drives that passion.
Well, I don't. I mean, for me, there's only one purpose for revolver, and that's in an ankle holster, and that's a 38 special snub nose. I mean, that's the only reason. They're the smallest of weapons to hide. But if I'm not a revolver person, number one, it requires a mechanical force to turn the cylinder, and therefore the accuracy of revolvers is nowhere near as good as a finely honed trigger of, let's say, a 9 millimeter Glock or even a 380. Who cares where? Um, no, I'm an automatic man. I have revolvers simply because they're easy to stow. And
Fair.
okay, hang on. And let's be fucking honest. If I've got a revolver in one pocket and I have a semi-auto in another, and I fall into the mud and some shit pops off, what am I going to reach for? The fucking revolver because it is going to fire. Where I have no clue what that semi-automatic is going to do, all caked with mud. So there's that advantage. But no, I'm a semi-auto man. I apologize, and thank you very much for having me on.
And
And
thank you very much for your time.
and if you want to do this again, schedule through Janice. All right.
Will do. Have a wonderful day, Mr. McAfee.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
I would like to thank Mr. McAfee for taking time out of his schedule to be on my podcast today. What a hell of a way to start 2020. And until next time, dear listener, see you out there.